Hey everyone, this is Kate from Moonflower Moments. I'm joining y'all today with a new hashtag in celebration of spring. So I'm going to call this one From Seed to Soul, and these are the decks that mirror the garden to me. So every day this week I have gone outside with a cup of tea and I have sat in my garden. My Peggy Martin roses are blooming, so they're like these hot pink, like a burst of beautiful color. And I really have been enjoying sitting within this space. And so I thought to myself, what is it to me that makes up a garden? And because I'm an outside person, I don't even think I need flowers. Just give me anything growing. I don't need a garden bench. I don't need a pathway. I just need some dirt and something growing, and I consider it to be a garden. But with that being said, my garden sanctuary is one that I have built from the ground up, and it does have various different elements. And so I thought about what those elements can mean symbolically to me. And then from there, I decided to ask myself, well, how would these symbolic meanings apply to specific decks in my life? So with that being said, I've created 10 different prompts, and these prompts all follow different elements and different things that are in the garden. And it's just a fun way to get us to connect parts of the garden with decks that we love. And so I want to go ahead and get started with the first thing that you see if you step into my garden, and that is my arbor. So my arbor, or my trellis, is rather a gateway into my garden. It's like an archway. And so I wanted something that is reflective of a portal to the next world, because when I step underneath that arbor, I am stepping into a new world. I'm stepping into my garden sanctuary. And so the deck that represents a portal to the next world to me is going to be my Greenwitch Tarot. And I think for me, this is an obvious choice because it's the world that I would like to live in. I like to think that all of these villagers definitely know each other. They're very deeply embedded into each other's lives. They're people that go over to each other's houses for coffee. Perhaps they visit the local apothecary for a particular potion or some kind of spell work. They drink together. They laugh together. They hunt together. They know of each other, this is Elise's little granddaughter, and she's learning magic for the first time. And so for me, this is the world that is the richest for me, because I think it has the richest character development. And if I'm going to step into a world, I want it to step into a community-oriented village where I feel safe and I feel secure. And to me, this kind of is what that garden means to me. Though I'm not engaging with other people necessarily in the garden, because it's one that I usually spend time in solitude in, I definitely still feel very connected with all of these different plants and animals and just different species that are in my garden that remind me that we're all part of a larger community together. And each one brings to the table a different personality that I engage with, and then they engage with me, because I am part of that table. I'm part of that community itself. And you can't separate one from the other, because we're all interconnected in that way. So this is my portal to the next world, my arbor deck. That would be Greenwitch, which I think at this point is kind of like a modern classic. All right, next I want to discuss my pathway deck, and this is a deck that gives you direction. And for me, the deck that gives me the most direction is my Secrets of the Mystic Grove. This is a deck that I go to when I'm feeling deeply, deeply unsure about my life and where to go next. And the reason that I tend to pick this deck, obviously for the word sanctuary, right? It is very calming, is because I like the fact that it has 3 keywords. And so it's going to sound a little bit paradoxical, but because this deck gives me choices, it gives me direction. And so when I sit down and I read with it, a lot of times I kind of run away from decks that have 3 keywords. I find them to be overwhelming. But every once in a while, I want to dip my toes into a place where I just feel absolutely sure. And I think the best way for me to feel that way is if I'm giving 3 choices, right? Letting go, freedom, healing. What am I going to choose to see as release? What is that going to mean for me? And in that sense, through the choice that I have to make, I actually gain that direction. So my Secret to my Mystic Grove deck is going to be my path deck, because it always tends to give me the direction that I need by kind of allowing me to choose for myself. I love this deck. All right. The next one is going to be a fountain deck, a deck that created a ripple effect in your life. So of course I had to pick Terra Botanical. I had to do it, y'all. I couldn't not do it. So many of y'all know, if you are regulars on my channel, that Terra Botanical was my first tarot deck. This is my copy that I show on YouTube and I use for clients. I keep my other one kind of sacred to me. So the reason that I had to pick this deck as one that has created a ripple effect in my life is because this is the deck that introduced me to the portal of tarot, the world of tarot. This deck changed absolutely fucking everything for me. So I've always been one to see spirituality and nature, because nature is spirituality, like we are one with the earth, truly, wholly, completely. But this is a deck that, because of its very theme, because of this is how I learned how to read tarot. I can't step outside and see a flower that is represented in this deck without instantly thinking about tarot. And so now I'm looking in the garden for all of these different tarot associations. You know, a little bit like the Garden Tarot series that Thea and Candy did a couple years ago. But I think once you start getting used to seeing these plants as these incredible, symbolic, rich organisms that they are, you start to look for these deeper meanings everywhere you go. And I think in a way, like, this deck is one that taught me how to read the signs of nature, because the minors are pips. So for example, this is Six of Cups. I see these two parents that are here, and these are their four children that are over here on the side. And like, of course, that's the baby, you know, and then we go all the way up until the oldest child. And it's like, I can look at a tree and I can look at the tree trunk and look for the signs and the symbols and the shapes that are within there. And I think that that is something that I do on a regular basis, and that is something that is such a gift, is that I intentionally engage with the signs of nature because of this deck and because of tarot in general. So this is my fountain deck. It's a deck that had created a ripple effect in my life. All right, next, once you actually get into the garden, you need a place to sit. And so I picked for this one my garden bench, a deck that begs contemplation. And for this, I picked the Architect's Tarot. So garden benches are where we go to contemplate, right? Like, I feel like that is the archetype of the garden bench, the stereotype of the garden bench. You sit down on a garden bench and you're there for the long run. And this is a deck that deeply invites contemplation for me, because it reminds me that I am a very small part of a very large world. All of the people in this deck, even the Empress right here, are so tiny in comparison to the grand scale of the rest of the world. And there's something about that that like shoots kind of like a shiver down my spine. When we sit on that garden bench, we contemplate to ourselves how everything that we are is so small in comparison to the large world around us. And that's exactly what this deck stands for. You know, you are an active participant in your life. There are people within this deck. But for the most part, they take up a small corner in comparison to the landscape in front of them. And so it's a very positive reminder of, you need to look outside of yourself every once in a while. And I think that's what the garden bench invites us to do, is to sit down and kind of lay our problems down for a moment and breathe within the rhythms of the larger world. So this is my garden bench deck, a deck that begs contemplation. All right, another part of the integral infrastructure of the garden, I feel like, is the garden tools, right? And so I wanted to pick a prompt that stands for a deck that's not afraid to get dirty. So my deck that is not afraid to get dirty, hands down, is my spread deck, the Shadow Work Edition. And you can see right up off the bat, like, we're getting dirty with this, like, your deep knowledge. This is a very useful deck. It's very practical. So that's another reason that it is a garden tool deck. But it is one that is definitely not afraid to dig things up. I feel like this is a very useful deck in the terms of, like, it is definitely a spade. It wants us to go within, to trust our deep intuition, but also to prod into the past. You know, who were we in the past? What news is upsetting us right now? Let this go. I'm seeing right here this big card in the background. What are you avoiding? And how incredible is that? To have a deck that calls you out on your shit. But sometimes I will ask a client if I feel like they're open to this kind of reading, to either like I'll like select some cards. So like I'll pick like 40 or maybe like 30, 40 is a lot. I'll pick like 30 cards and ask them, okay, choose like 5. I don't think I would pick 40. I think I'd probably pick 20. And like kind of like pre-select them based off of the ideas that they've given me and some of the themes that they want to write about or read about. Or in some cases, like if I'm reading for someone who is a tarot reader who understands how deep some of these questions are, I will actually hand them the whole deck and say, hey, you know, kind of create your own spread for it, and then I'll pull the cards to match that. And I feel like in both ways it really works, because there's enough like breadth and depth to this deck to really get into the meat of the potatoes into it. So this is my Garden Tools deck, a deck that is not afraid to get dirty. It's my shadow work, the shadow edition of the spread deck. All right, next is going to be a very special one to me. I wanted a deck that represented soil for me. And the soil deck is a deck that grounds you. And you can take this in all of different kinds of ways, because for many of us, like, various things ground us. Sometimes, like, a lot of us are drawn to earthy tones that ground us. Some people really like nice, calm, tranquil blues. I went ahead and took it in the sense of I wanted a deck that reminded me of my roots. But feel free to take this prompt however you choose. So the deck that grounds me the most and reminds me of my roots is going to be my Louisiana Cajun Creole Tarot. I know she's been making it on my channel a lot, but I've been using her a lot, y'all. What a blessing it is that I am. All right, so if you've been on my channel for even like a slight little minute, you know that my ancestral roots are ones that are really important to me. I did move away from Louisiana for one short year that I lived in Alabama, and then I promptly turned directly back because I needed to be here. This is where my heart feels like my feet are planted in the ground. It's where it feels like it's home for me. And so this deck represents the cultural and like historical significance and history of this place. So the triangles are the sword suit, and these represent the civil rights movement in Louisiana. All of the majors have been renamed to reflect cultural traditions or cultural figures. The accordions represent the tale of the forced exile of the Acadians. The fiddles represent the music of dance halls, which is really common down here. People still go to the dance halls. And the washboards reflect the contributions of the Creole Americans that live in Louisiana. And all of the courts have been renamed too. So this is a deck that grounds me because it literally looks like what is in my backyard. And I think this takes like a bunch of creative imagination to really represent the scope of what home means to so many of us that live here. So the hurricane to me, like, that is not, that's not a card that grounds me, but I damn sure know what to do in a hurricane. I think if you've lived down here, you definitely do. If you've lived anywhere that experiences hurricanes, you do. And there is a groundedness to that ritual of, okay, you know, it's a hurricane, so let me go ahead and buy some alcohol because we're going to have a hurricane party. That's a cultural tradition. I'm not saying it's very wise, but essentially you like go over to people's house and you drink during a hurricane and like you just pass the time doing that. So I'm not saying it's a wise thing to do, but it's a thing that we do. And so there's a groundedness in knowing that, like, I know what to do in these circumstances. I know who to be. I know how to express myself in my fullest form. And so this is my soil deck. It's the deck that grounds me, the deck that definitely nourishes me. All right, now we're on to deck number 7, and this is the early bloomers. So these are color after a long winter, a deck that has color after a long winter. And so I picked my Wild Whispers Oracle. So big thank you to Hannah over at Simply Han, who suggested, I don't know if she suggested that I get this deck, but she tagged me in it, and she was talking about how I would like it. So I was like, okay girl, I got you. And so I bought it immediately after seeing it, and I'm so thankful because she knows that I absolutely adore the other deck by this creator, which is the Wild Radiant. And so it was like, oh, I didn't need much persuasion at all. Like, if I would have seen this anywhere, if I would have known it was existing, like hell, this would have been on pre-order for me had I realized it. So this is my early bloomer of the year, not only because of the bright color, but because this is a deck that reminded me to warm up again. So I did have a long hibernation. I took a little bit of a witch's rest, I think in like January, where I wasn't producing a lot of content, or at least in my mind, I felt like I wasn't producing a lot. I was kind of taking a moment to regain myself spiritually and creatively. And that period existed a little bit longer than what I had anticipated. And so it wasn't until I started seeing a lot of flowers start blooming in the garden that I realized, okay, maybe it is time to wake up. Maybe it is springtime, and I need to warm up. And so having this deck in my hand, like pulling one card a day with my daily readings, has reminded me to kind of like melt any of the iciness that's still left over there, any of the hibernation that is still over there. These are my favorite colors in the world. These are colors that I want to sit in and be saturated in every single day. And I do love like a geometric shape. So it's one that like toys with my mind, but it also kind of reawakens, I guess, my solar plexus in a way too. I feel it sitting there. So this is my early bloomer deck, a deck that definitely woke me up with color after a long winter. Very good. I love this deck. I'm so happy that I got it. All right, next is going to be my late bloomers deck, and this is a deck that its lessons unfurl over time. I wanted to include this one. A card fell, so I guess I'll go ahead and start showing you the cards because that's what we're here for, I guess. I wanted to choose the late bloomers as a prompt because I felt in particular that there's a lot we can learn from sitting and waiting and watching and saying, okay, has this flower started blooming yet? Right? There's anticipation for going outside and kind of sitting with that plant and being part of its like very long-winded journey. And I feel like that's what this deck is for me. This is the Inner Child cards. All of the majors are renamed after either fairy tales or like archetypal characters in fairy tales, such as the fairy godmother. So this is a deck that I like to dip into the guidebook for. And because these cards are so massive, naturally I definitely include them as altar cards when I work with them. And I only pull one or two. And so it's like sometimes I don't immediately get how the big bad wolf connects to the devil. I have to sit on it. I have to think about it. But when all of a sudden that lesson hits, and this one has, like I've pulled this card before and it definitely took me like 3 days to see how it was hitting. It made complete and absolute sense to me. And so this is a deck that I think that its lessons are worth waiting for over time, because they unfurl over time. You kind of step your foot into it and you think that you get it, but it takes you a couple days to really see the full message and see it in its highest form. So this was the Inner Child cards. Next we're on number 9, and this one is a little bit of a fun one. This is the Baby Birds. I wanted a deck that is cheeping at you, ready to see the world. So show me what is ready to either see tarot tube, or it's something that's been locked away for a while that you're ready to bring out again. For me, I picked one that is like a brand new one, so this would be like a brand new baby bird for me. And that's going to be the Numinous Tarot. So I purchased this deck because Cedar McLeod was having a sale the other day for Transvisibility Day, and so I wanted to go ahead and support them. This is one that has been on my wish list for a really, really long time, probably for like 3.5 years now, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And I'm so glad I did. It's not one that I see on TarotTube a lot, but I find this to be really interesting, and like one that definitely plays within the tarot world but has its own very unique spin to it. So 6 of tomes with the free little library. I mean, this is just adorable, and like as someone who is a plus size woman, like I really, 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 really appreciate the representation here, like absolutely so much. Please give me more like plus size representation. And so it hits right there in that spot for me. But I know this is a deck that is meant to be beautifully inclusive of so many different people. And so I am so thankful to Cedar McLeod for creating something that can be used in a way that really reflects our natural world. So I feel like this one is ready to see the world. I'm really eager to read for someone with this deck. I am thinking that I'm going to ask my best friend if she would like a reading, but like I'm here for it. Like I really want to read with this deck ASAP. It seems to be one that is just full of like life, but also full of depth at the same time. I think if you know anything about Myers-Briggs personality types, this deck definitely feels like an INFP to me. And I'm an ENFJ, so I naturally very much like INFPs. And I'm just ready to take it out in the world and see what comes. Beautiful, look at that. It's a really beautiful Hierophant. All right. So now we're at my very last one. So we're at the Pollinator. So for Pollinator, I could have taken in so many different ways. Originally, I thought I was going to do butterflies because that's typically what is associated with me, what I tend to associate with myself. But I wanted to just give a general pollinator in general. And the reason that I chose this general term is because I want to see a deck that reminds you of your interconnectedness. And I feel like, especially because pollinators visit the same flowers, right? It didn't make sense to have a specific pollinator. I wanted something that was more general to reflect the interconnectedness of those pollinators, almost in a way as well. So the deck that reminds me of my own interconnectedness is going to be my Cantidue Oracle. I'm definitely going to have to hold this one because it is definitely circle. And so this one in particular, the dawn that follows the prolonged night. Beautiful. It totally reminds me of the interconnectedness of the cycles of like the moon and the sun. The dark solstice sun, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And like you can see like here, like all of the like kind of nebulous cloudiness that's circling around here. The concept of like dark and sun at the same time. You don't know where you are, but you are free. Your ears become a butterfly. Look how beautiful that is. So I guess when we pass, our ears become a butterfly. Wingless, you fall into the sea. The calving glacier. In the Garden of Lost Teeth. Some of these things I really like appreciate how we have like the teeth, plus we also have the garden, so it's like almost 2 different natural images that you typically don't see paired together. But I guess you would see this as like the lost teeth. Is that like the burial ground? Like is the burial ground like a garden where new life comes? There's a question there. But this is a deck that reminds me that life is much bigger than I am. We can lick dew from the green leaves. All intelligent tentacles. This is actually really cool because I had a student do a paper the other day on octopi and I learned absolutely so much about them. And I just thought it was really cool that there is like no central brain system. Like everything is just like a floating nervous system. And so every arm is just as intelligent as the next one. And I think that's so cool. Like, what can we learn from octopus? Like, we can learn so much from octopi. Yeah. So this is my deck that reminds me to open up my eyes and see that I am one with others. And there's way more around me than what we could even dream to realize. What the worms know. This is one of my favorite cards. Well, alrighty guys, I will wrap it up. So yeah, if you would like to do a response to this, I would love to see what you have to say. I feel like that is one of the most important parts of cultivating a garden, is getting to share it with other people. And so I would love to hear your decks that mirror the garden for you. So like I said, I'm going to label this from seed to soul. And if you would like to give a response, I mean, I would love to see it like in video. You can reply in comments. Feel free to like message me on Instagram or Blue Sky. I just absolutely love hearing from people. And so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. But I hope that all of you have a really beautiful spring, and I hope that everything is just treating you guys well. So until next time, I'll see y'all later.